Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'm Bert. I'm your host today, and today we're talking to Jo Kirsch, the legend over at Heart of the Village Yoga. I just looked into your biography for the first time, and I could not believe what was there. I mean, I know you very briefly through my wife, and I got your story personally, but I didn't know the actual resume, which is so cool. I mean, okay, so you're the owner and director of Heart of the Village Yoga in Manchester, Vermont, which is a beautiful little studio. If you get a chance, go check it out. It's really awesome. And you started out, you've been practicing for
32 years.
32 years practicing yoga, and you started out with Ashtanga yoga, and I'm saying that right. Is that right?
You are. Actually, I didn't start with that. There were about 10 years that I did more of what's known as like Hatha, which is a more general yoga. I was into it for about 10 years before I actually found Ashtanga yoga.
Oh,
anyway,
okay.
but yeah.
Well, that's how I got my start, was Hatha yoga. That's really all I know, and I don't know much about it, so I'm excited to learn more. So then you found Ashtanga yoga, and that's what you got trained in, right?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
And then throughout your 20 plus years teaching now, you have also learned and been certified in adaptive yoga, trauma-sensitive yoga, yoga nidra, yoga nidra, yoga for 12-step recovery, and yin yoga. Yeah. That's incredible.
Oh, I think, what's the brain? It was started by an Olympic athlete who fell and had a traumatic brain injury, and he lives in Vermont, and I will think of the name of it, but it's good to include because it's yoga for people with traumatic brain injury.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So you have a
training in that too.
A training for people with traumatic brain injury.
Yeah, I mean, it's not our training, we went to it.
Right.
We actually offered it at the studio for a while, but we don't have, it's really hard in our town because we're rural and not that many people, so when you get into a specific population, like anytime we try to do yoga classes for people that are, prenatal or postnatal, or chair yoga, or yoga for people with, traumatic brain injury, or yoga for 12-step recovery, those specific things, it's just hard to get. It's not that the people don't exist, but it's hard to get everybody to pool together at the same time to take a class. But anyway, I been off in a tangent.
No, that totally makes sense. But it's cool that you have all that credentials so that you can bring those into the classes that you have. And I saw that you just graduated from Soul School. What does that mean? What is Soul School?
So there's a teacher, musician that I met probably now, I don't know, half a dozen or so years ago. And one of my colleagues told me about him, and he is a Bhakti yogi, and Bhakti is the yoga of devotion, and so it's really about, he's a musician, he has a band, Sean Johnson and the Wild Lotus band, they're fantastic, out of New Orleans, and it's all the music that they do is really about opening your heart and kind of surrendering to a higher power, and a lot of it has to do with like Hindu deities, but it's not religious, it's more of, the Hindu deities represent kind of the really archetypes that exist within all of us, and so there's just different aspects and songs that go to them. So anyway, fell in love with his music, and then he offered, it was actually a Kripalu, a weekend workshop called Bhakti on the Mat, and so what he does is he combines yoga with the band playing while you're doing the yoga, and also storytelling and poetry and all this stuff. So it's just really cool. So anyway, during the pandemic, when I was just looking for some juice, to stay motivated and just current and everything, Sean was offering his 200-hour yoga teacher training called Soul School, which focuses on this perspective of teaching from a place of Bhakti yoga, and so I did that online. And so cool. It's always learning, always just the more you learn, the better it gets.
Yeah. I mean, I read a little bit about Bhakti, and I was I loved the definition of it. It seemed like it was all about connectedness. It was all about connecting with uh, divine or with each other, and it just seems like such a cool
community.
yeah, and such a cool
And
program.
joy. Yes, absolutely.
Yes, exactly. And then now you're training to be a yoga therapist. What does that mean?
Well, so yoga is therapeutic
Yes.
by nature, no question about it. But the yoga therapy training is really geared to working one-on-one with individuals, addressing a range of issues that people have, from anxiety and depression, traumatic trauma, to also shoulder injuries, physical injuries. And then the list actually goes on. I mean, things like, arthritis and osteoporosis and eating disorders and just, all these different things. So it's kind of, as my teacher will say, it's kind of, people come to yoga therapy kind of as like their last resort. They've tried the more traditional routes to achieve what they're trying to do, and they're looking for another way. And so as a yoga therapist, it's our role to just see if we can help. We don't know, we can't promise that, but really through the science of yoga, it's just incredibly powerful how it can work therapeutically to heal people on this range from physical, emotional conditions. It's great. So yeah, so it's just, I've been teaching group classes for a long, long time, and I've taught thousands and thousands of people yoga. But I'm excited to have this, container, this framework to work one-on-one with people to help them heal. And it's also not about like me healing them. It's about, as a yoga therapist, teaching them, giving them tools so that they can, educating individuals so they can heal themselves. So we give them like something to do and say, okay, come back in a week or 2 weeks and, do these practices. So people have to be compliant and do the work. But yeah, it's incredibly effective. It can be incredibly effective.
So let's get into that. What are some kind of techniques that you would recommend to somebody that's like, for instance, our theme today is cultivating joy. And I want to learn more about cultivating joy in our normal everyday life.
Right.
And how would somebody, let's say the average person is dealing with a lot of stress, dealing with a lot of anxiety, dealing with a lot of, probably has trauma, because I think most everybody does.
Right. Agreed.
What kind of work would you recommend just kind of, everybody out there, I guess?
Yeah. So yoga is defined one of the probably most well-known definitions of yoga is found in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which were written about 500 BC. And Patanjali was a sage who wrote down 196 of these aphorisms or threads. And that's where the definition of yoga, as we know it today, comes from. And there's 4 books of these in the Yoga Sutras. And in the first book, the second sutra, the Sanskrit is Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. And what it literally translates to is yoga is the cessation of the fluctuation of the mind. But really what it means is yoga happens when our thoughts bother us less. Yoga happens when our thoughts bother us less. So that's just to say it, really simply. And and then the third sutra is when our thoughts bother us less, then we can abide in our true nature. We can be our true selves. We're not distracted by so many things. And then in that first book of these 4 books of the Yoga Sutra, there's 4 books within the 196 sutras. The first book goes on to say that this is achieved over a long time with practice, and best, uninterrupted practice. So keep it steady. And it's also achieved without attachment. So So Eastern philosophy in general, not just yoga, but it basically says that 99% of the suffering that we all experience is a result of our attachment to things. So it can be things like, if I only have those UGG boots, I'll be happy. It can be something like that. Or if when I get that house or that job or this, or like something's going to make me happy. It can also be really attachment to an idea. So for instance, my husband, Bob Speck, and I, we had the privilege of working some of the best work we've done for a few years at the Adaptive Sports Foundation in Windham, New York, about 10 or so years ago. Or more now, anyway, and we worked with a lot of veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder, and so you have a healthy individual, and they go off. These were veterans that were post 9/11, Afghanistan and Iraq veterans, and American veterans that were in a war there, and or 9/11 itself. And you take a healthy individual who has all these aspirations and a vision of what their life is going to be. And then something happens, like they develop COPD from being around all the air from 9/11, or they lose, or they're paralyzed, or they're this or they're that. And if they come back from war or from their service, and they are attached to how they thought their life was going to be, they're just going to suffer. Like if they, but if they accept how they are now, then they can begin again. Does that make sense?
So absolutely.
Yeah. So we get attached, like for instance, if you get divorced and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm divorced, and you have this whole image of like I didn't expect my life to go that way, and you can you hold on to that. It can make you unhappy, So attachments to ideas, to outcomes. Another example of that is just to sometimes when we want something, we try really, really hard, and we keep trying and trying, and we get stuck. And then when we just because we want it to be a certain way, and then when we just say, okay, I'm just going to let go, whatever's going to happen, and then just things move, right?
Right.
So it's kind of like that.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
But so getting back to so the yogic practices help us. Help our thoughts bother us less, help us have, less constant thoughts. And so the practices that we might use to help somebody range from like some physical movement. That's where people mostly think of yoga as like asana is the Sanskrit word. So from the physical, doing some poses to move and stretch the body. And then there's the breath body. There's so using breath, that's another way. There's actually this model that the training that I'm doing follows, and it's follows the koshas, which the koshas, again, that's another Sanskrit word, but it's layers. There's 5 layers, energetic layers. And so the outermost one is our physical layer. And so you mostly address that with the asana practice, doing. And then the next layer in is the breath body. So you, through controlled breathing and being aware of your breath, breathing correctly. So many people go around like they don't breathe into their belly. They keep all their breath up high, and that's very stressful. And so sometimes just an awareness, you could be amazed. Someone can heal from just changing how they breathe.
I gotta say, when you mentioned breath, I just took a deep breath.
Right,
and
I
immediately started feeling a little bit more relaxed and calm, which is just,
that old
something
adage
that you forget. Yeah.
When someone says, like, the reason why these things are like sayings that we've heard all the time is because they're true. Like, take a deep breath, when something happens and it's like, and you kind of come back into your body.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the whole thing. We spend so much time kind of like here, I could be here physically right now, but I as a human person, I could still be thinking of like what I have to do after this, as opposed to being present right here, right now. That's that condition that monkey mind that's all over the place.
You are speaking to, I guess my language, I suppose, which is not a good thing. I have a real problem with presence, and it's something that I've, they noticed when I was a kid with the ADD, and then it just continued throughout my life. And I think the introduction of dopamine and the social media and all the world out there really kind of drew me away from being even more in reality, which is really stressful. But so when I met my wife, who's actually worked with you, she introduced a meditation practice to me, which it feels very similar to what you're talking about with the yoga practice.
Yeah.
And I want to get back to the last two layers because I want to, what's after breath, but I do just want to say, just kind of like echo what you're saying, that controlling thoughts and letting our thoughts not bother us as much, letting our identity not attaching ourselves to identity or what we expect is just such the path to cultivating joy is, back to where we started.
Yep.
But I do want to hear what's underneath the breath
Well,
layer.
so there's 5. So
sorry.
no, that's okay. So there's the physical, and then there's the breath body, and then there's the mind, which is in that. And then after that there's the intuitive, which is and then there's just kind of the bliss. So that's like in the middle. And they all interact and affect one another. But meditation is actually a part of yoga. So people, in the West particularly, think of yoga as the asana practice, the posture practice.
Okay.
But there's many limbs, and breathing practices and meditation are 2 of them, of the limbs. And so anyway, again, saying the physical you can address with a physical practice, the breath body with breath practices, the mind through learning some philosophy. So for instance, like I'm not saying, like I didn't make this up and just saying this is what yoga, I'm saying Patanjali Sutras. If you study Patanjali Sutras, or just some of them, like the ones that I'm saying, which will teach you how to have your thoughts bother you less. So it's using an ancient text and really helps you remember the path, really, and not just get so distracted, like you said, by like false identity again, like I'm my job, or I'm a mother, I'm a yoga teacher, I'm a scientist. Yes, we may be, but that's not like who our true soul is. Those are roles that we play. And so then anyway, obviously I can have a lot. I can keep going on about all this. So the next, and another thing that helps with the mind actually is chanting. And so that's where I mentioned Bhakti Yoga before. Bhakti Yoga usually involves a lot of chanting. It's usually chanting the names of God or the divine, but it can be, whether you're like whatever background that you are, there's something about people in communities singing together. And there's been studies done, of older people like in nursing homes or assisted living homes, and half of them, sang and got together with people, and half didn't. And the ones that sang and got together with people doing that, could come off some of their medicine and be healthier and not, get out of their depressions. I mean, there's science that shows that. So there's the chanting. Many have heard the chant Om, but there's, and so it's that chant, and then there's other chants as well. And it can just be like, peace, peace, peace. But, so chanting and philosophy are 2 of the ways that we help the mind focus. My personal experience from doing it is I feel like when I chant, I immediately feel like more space in my mind. I don't feel so like the thoughts are like, nonstop, And then the next stage, the intuitive, is when you get into the meditation, the focus. And so, but a lot of it can be combined. For instance, whenever I'm meditating, I combine a breath practice. I might focus on my breath as I meditate, and I might also use a mantra. You've probably heard that word, that just helps me focus too. So I might combine, some of the tools.
Definitely.
And just to jump to the 5th one, that bliss, there's a certain really important key of surrender. So it's surrender to something bigger than each of us individually. So whether that for you is, and I'll call it the divine, whether it's nature, whether it's Jesus or Buddha or Allah, but it's surrender, or Krishna. It's surrender to something bigger, realizing that we don't have the puppet strings. We are not in control.
Right. Right. Because then if you start to think you're in control, the mind starts going again. Those thoughts start becoming obsessive and take over. Yeah.
But so there's, I hope, I don't know, I didn't get into too much detail of some of these things because I don't mean to make it sound that complicated, but really it ends up being very simple, really. It's really addressing meeting people where they're at as far as the yoga therapy, and the one-on-one. Obviously, you can do that more, but even in the classes, it's generally a combination of moving and breathing. Moving and breathing, just like, kids, they run around all the time, right? As we get older, we get more stagnant and we don't do that. So it's moving and breathing to help us, be in our bodies and not just taken over by all these thoughts running rampant all the time. And then, then it can be more specific if there's something specific going on, if it's a physical thing, more specific practices to help with that. If it's anxiety, there's some, you might go a certain way. If there's depression, there's different techniques or different sequences. Like if you came to me and you said you're anxious, I might work with you some and say, okay, go home and, do this. And then, every day for 2 weeks, come back, that kind of thing.
I'm going to have to get those notes from you after.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I could talk to you for hours about this. But I do want to talk to you. I want to move on a little bit about and talk to you about Heart of the Village. And I got to know you because my wife ran an event with you, and she's a Reiki master practitioner, and she did a sound bath with you, and it was a beautiful experience for several levels. One was because the sounds are amazing, and it's very a community space, and you feel very meditative, but your yin yoga practice was incredible, so relaxing, and I didn't get to participate because I was being the technical person, but I at least got to witness it, and the usage of sounds and your the quotes that you pulled, the poetry that you pulled, the all of that was so beautiful and so in line with all the things you're talking about. I mean, it seems like when you're talking about combining these things, it seems like a practice like that combines everything. The philosophy, the meditation, the physical, all of that. Do you have any events like that coming up? I know that
we do, and I'll just add too. I forgot so when we were talking about things to address the mind, the Manamaya Kosha, chanting, philosophy, but poetry also.
Yes.
Poetry is very kind of underutilized in our culture, I think now, but it's really powerful and can really help people too. So Friday, October 27th, that we are celebrating our 10-year anniversary. It's 10 years since Heart of the Village Yoga opened.
Congratulations.
So that's kind of cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah, especially having made it through the pandemic and everything.
Yeah,
that
right.
was like really crazy. So we have, daily classes. We have 2 to 3 classes every day of the week, and they have different ranges of physical exertion and less, more meditative, more less exertion required. But then we also have special events. We have a couple that actually is from the Midwest that has been to us probably a few times now over the last half a dozen years, and they do amazing sound with didgeridoos and gongs and this and that, and they're coming in and doing a yoga nidra, which yoga nidra is a guided meditation, a very healing, really, really great practice, really great for people who are victims of trauma. So they'll guide us on this. It's really a journey. All you do is lie back, and there's this incredible sound, and at the same time, the sound is so healing, vibration is healing, and then there's also like a journey that you go on during it where you kind of get into this like subconscious level and healing happens. Then we have another event coming up that Anna and I are doing, again, the same as before, where it's a combination of sound and yin yoga. We have actually a new event that we just put up there, which is a workshop for coming November. I think it's 18th or 19th, and it's mindfulness techniques. It's for women, and just getting some tools to de-stress.
Which is what we all need.
So it's kind of a combination. Yeah, we just offer things that the thing about it is that yoga has literally saved my life. It's something that I really. It's helped me so much as a human, heal from trauma, and so I go to it, to stay joyful, to find joy. Like if you come back to that, to release stress, to release anxiety, to just, life is short. The older I get, the shorter I realize that it is. And just to, cultivate joy in each moment as much as possible. And if we're always worried about, what's happened or what's going to happen, we miss what's happening.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So thank you so much for being here, Jo. That was lovely. I think that was absolutely perfect. And yes, if you get a chance, go to heartofthevillageyoga.com.
It's
Heart of Village,
heartofvillageyoga.com.
and check out their upcoming schedule. And also just get to know Jo, because she is such a superstar, and it's so cool that she has become what her studio is titled, which is the Heart of the Village. So it's really awesome.
You're sweet. I just have to say too, it's not just me. We have some wonderful, wonderful teachers there,
Yes.
and that are very, very well loved by the community. And we wouldn't be a village if we didn't have them. So I appreciate your kudos, but it's definitely not just me. I hold the space, but we all work together to really to heal, to help everybody heal. So
Of course.
yeah. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Jo.
Yeah.